Paul calls money worship. That's not a metaphor. It's the literal language of the verse. He takes the financial gift the Philippians sent him in the hand of a courier named Epaphroditus, and he names it with the language of the Old Testament temple altar. He calls it a fragrance. He calls it a sacrifice. He calls it acceptable and well-pleasing to God. And that is what God called the burnt offerings in Leviticus. Philippians 4, verse 18. But I have all things and abound. I'm filled, having received from Epaphroditus the things that came from you, a sweet-smelling fragrance, an acceptable and well-pleasing sacrifice to God. Read what Paul does here. The Philippians sent him a financial gift. Paul received it, and then he reframes the entire transaction. He says, "What you sent was not money. What you sent was a sweet-smelling fragrance. What you sent was an acceptable and well-pleasing sacrifice to God." The language is from the altar, and the Greek word for sacrifice is thousia, the same word used for the offerings in the temple. The fragrance is the smoke rising from the burnt offering. The acceptable and well-pleasing is the verdict God gives over a sacrifice he receives. Paul is saying, your money was liturgy. That changes a lot of things. For the worship team and the production team, for the creatives, this verse lands in two specific places. The first is about what you call worship. Most of us think worship is what happens on Sunday morning, the songs, the set, the musical moment. It's real, songs are worship, but Paul is naming something else as worship in the same theological category. Generosity, a check sent to a missionary, money that helped a friend in ministry pay rent, a gift to a church plant, a donation to a project. The Philippians did not sing one of Paul's songs, they sent him a check, and Paul put that check on the altar. That should change how you think about generosity in your own life. Your bank account is part of your worship. The way you spend your money is liturgy. Where you have been faithful with what you have is part of your offering to God, in the same theological category as what you sing on Sunday. The second is about what your team is doing when they show up. The volunteer who set up the stage was offering a sacrifice to God. The drummer who played without pay was offering a sweet-smelling fragrance. The audio engineer who came in early was burning incense on the altar. The vocalist, who left her Saturday night plans to make it to call time, was making a well-pleasing offering. That's not flowery language. It's what Paul says these things are. He puts the gift from the Philippians on the altar and he calls it acceptable and well-pleasing to God. The same is true of what your team puts on the altar every week. If you start seeing it that way, two things change. You stop apologizing for asking people to serve. The asking is hosting an act of worship, not extracting labor. And you start receiving what they give differently, with reverence, the way you would receive an offering. The drummer is not a resource. The drummer is a worshiper. So here's our question to sit with today. What have I been treating as work or labor or money that Paul would have called worship? And what would change if I started receiving it the way God receives a sacrifice on the altar? Let me pray. Lord, you receive what is offered, the songs, the money, the hours, the tired bodies showing up at 6 a.m., the drum part, the check. The Sunday morning yes, you receive all of it as worship. Form us into people who can see it that way too. Form our teams into people who know that what they are doing is worship in the deepest theological sense. And let us, all of us, be a sweet-smelling fragrance, an acceptable and well-pleasing sacrifice to you this week. In your name, amen. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Formation to Transformation, a Worship Devotional podcast. It's been just an honor to hear from so many of you. I would just ask if you could leave me a rating and review wherever you're listening to this, and you can find everything else going on at formationtotransformation.com. You can get a link to my Substack and get set up on emails. And if you're going to share an episode, I so appreciate it, but would you head over to Instagram and tag me there? It's at Ryan Loche, RyanLoche. That's how you pronounce my name, by the way, Loche. So just for those of you interested. Anyway, thank you. I'm rambling. Thank you for being a part of this, and we'll see you in the next episode.